Greetings. This is the Cancer Interviews podcast, and I'm your host, Bruce Morton. Our guest on this episode has overcome a lot: breast cancer, double mastectomy, chemotherapy, radiation, but we're happy to report she is very much still with us. She is Jessica Wharton of Las Cruces, New Mexico. Now is the time to hear her powerful story, and here she is. Jessica, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I appreciate you having me on.
And the first thing we want to do is find out more about Jessica Wharton. So if you would, Jessica, tell us a bit about your life exclusive of cancer. If you would, tell us a bit about where you're from, what you've done for work, and what you like to do for fun.
Sure. I'm originally from the Pacific Northwest. I have 2 adult daughters. I'm currently in school finishing my business administration degree in human resources. And for fun, I like to be outdoors. I love the mountains here in Las Cruces. I love to go hiking when I can. So those are what I like to do.
Well, now let's talk about your cancer journey. And for all of us who have been on a cancer journey, there was that time in which we thought our health was regular, it was normal, and then something happened that tipped us off that it wasn't normal. For you, when did you initially notice something wrong, and what was wrong?
Sure. So in 2011, I had noticed that I had visible breast lumps, 3 of them on my left breast, and I was losing weight rapidly. So I went to the doctors and they dismissed me, saying it didn't feel like cancer and I was too young to get breast cancer. I was 33 at the time. So I went 9 months with visible lumps in my breast before I decided that it was time to go see somebody else for a second opinion, because my lymph nodes were getting swollen and painful, and I was just really uncomfortable. I had no idea what was going on with my body at the time. And that's when I had, the test done and I was diagnosed.
Each of us is different. Each of us with a cancer diagnosis is different, and each diagnosis is different. Obviously, it was not a good day when you got this news, but when you got it, how did you handle it?
Well, I was by myself, and I actually had a plastic surgeon did the biopsy, which is really unheard of. So, but I was in the plastic surgeon's office, and I was waiting there. They were really late, about like 2 hours behind. And I'm like, gosh, I have to get back to work. I was working for Gatorade at the time in Arizona. And they called me back and they were like, well, Jessica, your right breast is fine, but your left breast has cancer in it. And my world just collapsed. My heart sunk into my stomach. I didn't know how to handle it. I called my partner at the time, Jake, and he came and got me. And we just sat and cried together in the car.
By the way, we're confident you'll be able to learn some tips and tools from Jessica's story to help you through your personal cancer journey. But first, we'd like to invite you to please give us a like, leave a comment or review below, and share this story with your friends. Kindly click on the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon. That way you'll be notified the next time we post a cancer interview. We also want to remind you that on Cancer Interviews, we do not distribute medical advice. If you seek medical advice, please see a licensed healthcare professional. So, Jessica, you've gotten this awful news, but at some point you have to look forward and decide what you're going to do about it. Did you have a choice? Did you have treatment options?
In terms of my double mastectomy, I did. Now, I was advised that it would be beneficial to me to have both of my breasts removed, regardless of if I had cancer or not, because my breast health was so unhealthy at the time. I just continued on with that. So, it was crushing for me to learn this news. And,
So in a way, first of all, you found you had cancer, but, you mentioned that it was crushing. Just how crushing was it to get that news that you would be undergoing the double mastectomy?
Well, I immediately had to stop work. I scheduled my double mastectomy for the next week. It's been 12 years now. It's 2025. And so I haven't been able to return to work full time in that capacity. So it definitely changed my life in many ways.
Now, you had mentioned Jake, and it sounds like he was a source of support. Beyond Jake, were there other people or organizations that were sources of support for you?
Sure. So my in-laws were a huge support for me as well, along with my parents. And the Tammy Dykstra Foundation, they actually would take me to some of my appointments that I had, and they really helped out a lot. My partner, Jake, had to move to New York to take a job so I could have health insurance. I didn't have health insurance at the time, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So he wasn't able to be there with me during my treatment, but, he was a source of inspiration and hope for me, along with his family too. They would come visit me every few weeks. And then in the spaces between is when the Tammy Dykstra Foundation would come in and help. So.
Now, in terms of addressing the double mastectomy, did you have choices, or is there only one way to go?
I had choices, but again, I was advised that it would be best for me to have both of my breasts removed because they were so unhealthy. I also didn't want to have to deal with the thought of recurrence in the quote unquote normal breast. So, I mean, yes, I was given choices for my double mastectomy, and I did choose to have that done.
Okay, and in terms, was there more than one way to go about this procedure?
At the time, it was either a single mastectomy on the affected breast, or it was complete removal of both breasts. And when the surgeon had done the biopsy, he actually didn't get clean margins. So they had decided that it would be best also to remove some lymph nodes, which is a good thing because it did go into my lymph nodes as well. So overall, I'm happy with the decision to have a double mastectomy. For some women, that's not the case, but for me, that's what I decided. And yes, I was given choices for that treatment option, yes.
Would you say the procedure was a success?
Yes, in terms of the removal of the cancer, absolutely. Yes, I've been in remission since 2013.
And in terms of treatment after the procedure, what were your choices for that?
I was chemotherapy and radiation. I wasn't given choices as to the specific chemotherapy. That was made for me. And
in terms of the chemotherapy cocktail, what was that?
Sure. It was the first 4 sessions were the Red Devil, and the last 4 were Taxol, paclitaxel to be exact. And
I've heard 2 things about the Red Devil. It can be potent, but it's also awful. What was the most difficult part of the Red Devil phase of your chemotherapy?
I felt like I just had this terrible flu all of the time. And as soon as I started to get better, it was time for another treatment. So I was completely incapacitated at that point. I needed help in my home. So I had another agency, a home care agency, come and help me do my chores and take care of my personal needs. So yeah, it was a very, very hard experience and very challenging for me at the time. And it was hard to lose my hair. I didn't think it would be as big of a deal as it was, but to lose your hair is quite devastating. So for me, that's what happened.
And I do think there's kind of a double standard where this is concerned. I always think it's more traumatic for a woman than for a man. So did you go around bald, or did you opt for wigs? Because women who have undergone breast cancer and then they've suffered the side effects of chemotherapy, some have opted for wigs and some not. How about yourself?
Sure. So I absolutely did opt for wigs. However, I was in Arizona at the time, like I mentioned, and so it was very, very hot. And to wear a wig, it heats you up. And so I had a cap that I would wear, this cute little white cap. And to be honest, I have a really nice shaped head underneath this hair, so I was okay to do that.
Now, you had the Red Devil cocktail to start off, and then you were going to go to another form of chemotherapy. What happened with that, with the Taxol?
Sure. So with the Taxol, I was actually allergic to it. So I had severe reaction and I became a convalescent for several years afterwards. I wasn't able to take care of myself or do normal activities of daily living as a result of the Taxol treatment that I had. I had no idea that you could even become allergic to chemotherapy, but it wasn't until I was hospitalized several times in that span of the 2 doses that I had of Taxol, and they had decided, that's enough. You don't need to do this anymore. We'll move on to something else.
And what was something else?
Sure. So it was super radiation. And I had 30 sessions of that.
And what was the toughest part of the radiation?
Sure. So the burning of my skin, having open sores, open wounds. And then also you go every day for several days, right? In a week. So you go like 5 days a week for 5 weeks. And it's just hard to get up every morning and do that because you're so fatigued. I was so tired from the effects of the Taxol that I was allergic to that the radiation just made it even worse. It just kind of magnified things.
I have to ask, Jessica, how difficult was this? Obviously, the picture you've painted is that this is very difficult physically, but mentally, mentally and emotionally, how tough is it to face each day with all this fatigue?
It's very challenging, and that's where the inspiration and hope for my family and friends came in. They really motivated me to continue to keep going through treatment when I wanted to stop. So that's kind of the approach that I took. The emotional toll, though, it still lingers. I still have PTSD today from my cancer treatment that I had. So.
But there had to be a point in which it appeared things were changing for the better. Could you sense that things were trending in a good direction?
Yes. After I was done with the radiation, and I had some time to heal and be back with my partner, Jake, and sort of resume a normal schedule, things had gotten better for me. And then I was told that I was in remission. So I've been in remission since 2013, and that's a very, very good feeling.
And I was going to ask, just how exciting was that when they told you there was no evidence of disease?
Oh, I felt like I had won the lottery. It just was amazing to be told that your cancer, may never come back, that you're healed. I mean, that's life-changing. It's just as profound as getting a cancer diagnosis as it is to hear that you don't have cancer anymore.
So in terms of the here and now, physically, is there anything you cannot do today that you could do prior to your diagnosis?
Sure. So I haven't been able to return to the workforce in a full-time capacity like I want to because of my fatigue. I also now have an autoimmune disorder. So those things definitely play a role in my life today still. I am back in school, so that's fabulous. I love doing that. But I wish I had the capabilities to return to work full time. That's what I love doing. I work in human resources. And yeah.
There are so many jobs anymore that can be done from home. Is it possible that your professional future could include your finding full-time work or something close to full-time work, working out of your house?
I'm hopeful for that. Yes, I definitely have been searching out remote positions, and in human resources, it is possible to work full-time in a remote capacity. So yes, I've definitely been looking for those jobs, but it's, with school, I'm considered full-time, but I really only spend about 4 hours a day on school. So I consider it part-time. But that part-time work is very, can be overwhelming for me at times. I get very tired easily. I don't have a lot of stamina on top of the chronic pain issues that I deal with.
Our guest is Jessica Wharton of Las Cruces, New Mexico. And we're about to wrap up with Jessica, but we want to conclude the way that we do just about all the time, Jessica, with this question for you. Let's pretend that you encountered someone who had gotten the same kind of diagnosis that you got. And they're at a point that you were, a juncture you probably were at one time, in which you had far more questions than answers. If there's one piece of information that you wanted to give this person who had just been diagnosed, one thing you wanted to make sure stuck with them, what would it be?
To self-advocate. You know, if you're not feeling good, let people know. It's okay to talk to your doctors about those kinds of things. So definitely speak up, build that relationship with your medical providers, because it's essential. So self-advocacy and building a relationship with your provider are two important takeaways that I would have.
Excellent advice. Jessica Wharton, Las Cruces, New Mexico, thanks so much for sharing your story with us. This is going to be informative. It's going to be inspirational to somebody out there who either has just been diagnosed, or if they're in that twixt and tween zone in which they haven't been diagnosed, but they think they might be, that can be of help to them. So Jessica, thanks very much for being with us on Cancer Interviews.
Thanks so much, Bruce. It's my pleasure.
And we want to remind you, as we always do when we conclude, that if you or a loved one are on a cancer journey, you are not alone. There are people out there, just like Jessica, who can be of help to you as you make your way through that cancer journey. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.